I consider myself to be an incredibly blessed person, not because of anything tangible or touchable or even concrete, but because I've had so many rich and powerful moments and experiences in life. For a boy who was born in the hills of West Virginia on the side of a mountain with the half end of the house hanging off a cliff, I've gotten to go a whole lot of places. Who was one of 15 children said that she escaped the dismal surroundings of her Alabama hut in the red clay of Alabama by reading books and traveling in her mind to places that she would probably never get to go. It's amazing that her son got to go places that she only got to read. So I consider myself to be blessed. To have traveled other places and met other cultures and broadened my thinking and perspective beyond my cultural persuasion is a rich experience. Because most people are just narrow, confined to folks who look like them, act like them, and think like them. That's the only language they know how to speak. And frankly, they think anything else is wrong. But I've gotten to travel around the world and seeing God express himself in a multiplicity of ways. And for that, I'm grateful and thankful. Had opportunities to experience different things, not long before television. Most people think you started when they turned you on TV. That's not how it was. I grew up preaching on front porches and in garages and back in the grocery stores and trailers and trailer parks and tent meetings and little bitty tiny places, where you didn't need a microphone. Old country preaching where you had to slap your leg. I don't know what it was supposed to be in your leg, but if you slap your leg, you could think of what you was going to say next. Great experience. I preached in everything. I started preaching in the hills of West Virginia, preached in the woods, preached in the shower, preached to myself, preached to trees and squirrels and possums, preached to anybody that let me preach. Preached in storefronts and shanties, white folks and black folks and brown folks, any kind of folks, dead folks, anywhere. I preached to anybody, didn't make any difference. I went down in a place called Lego, West Virginia, and preached in a church. There's a bunch of snake handlers down in the woods. I went in there and preached. Sister Jakes didn't want to go that night for some reason, but I went down there and preached there. I preached in the bush in Ghana. Stepped over goat's blood and chicken's blood, and in the presence of witch doctors prayed the prayer of faith in the name of Jesus. Preach messages of racial reconciliation after the apartheid in South Africa, encouraging all cultures and ethnicities to meet up under the banner of God's auspicious blood. Had breakfast with the president of Nigeria, had dinner with the president of Ghana, the former president of Ghana, had opportunities to meet at the White House. Boy, something. Was there in the room with President Clinton when he divulged his deepest, darkest secret, 5 to 7 feet from him, ministered to him and to his wife. Was there with President Bush right before he went to Congress to declare war after September 11th. Gotten to do a lot of stuff. It's great stuff that you could just put in your memoirs. I've seen people at a lot of different places and stages, literally counseled over the last 28 years, from the crack house to the White House. Isn't that something? I've seen people at the best moments in life. When a little girl is getting married and the mama is crying because her little baby's getting married. I've been in the back room with this groom who was waiting to come out, trying to make sure he had his bow tie on straight and his lines together. I've been there in the delivery room when mothers gave birth after doctors had said she'd never be able to have a child, and she gave birth to a child healthy and whole, so crying so hard she couldn't even see the baby. Great experience. It was wonderful. I've been there when homeless people who had lived up under bridges got their first house. I've been there. I've dedicated houses for people in our own ministry that we hired off the street who were homeless and gave them jobs, and they built their first house, and I got to dedicate it, go in the house. And I'm just, see, that doesn't mean something to you because you always had a house. But if you never had a house, and to have a brand new house, it'll make you great moments. But I've also been there in some tough moments. I've been there when groups of kids gathered around the bed to kiss their mama goodbye, as cancer had eaten through her organs and destroyed her body. I've been there when a great woman of God had succumbed to cancer so terrible that her bowels were coming up through her mouth, and I was holding her hand as she left this world. Tough moments, really, really dark moments. I've been there when mongoloid babies were born, and the called me in because they were about to disconnect babies from life support systems, and my responsibility was to help the family through the process of that agonizing moment. I've been there when there's been infidelity and marriage is so severe that the whole house is in shambles, and when you pull into the driveway you could almost feel the tension before you ever even get to the door. I've been there when people were just so angry at one another that they were ready to fight, and I've come over in the middle of the night to break up fights between husbands. I've been there when children got into trouble and mothers had to rush down to jail to get their sons who had done something crazy. I've been there when the whole marriage, after 20 years of being together, boom, just exploded. The woman couldn't figure out what in the world happened. I've been there when life was so tough that people couldn't be phony. You know, see, we love our images and our reputation and our names and our status, and we want to fit in, and we want everybody to think everything's wonderful. You know how we do it. I'm so glad to be here. We're glad. Oh, yes. So we're glad to be here. Oh, and we're going to intercede for the children all over the world. And then you can do all of that until real calamity hits. When real calamity hits, you don't have time to put up a mask or front or anything. People just get the naked you. This is who I am, and we in trouble tonight. And because I've been there when those crises begin to occur, there's a level of transparency that I've been able to witness that has changed my whole perception of humanity. I wrote Woman Thou Art Loose. 13 years ago, I was sitting up pecking at the typewriter, writing Woman Thou Art Loose, trying to get up enough resources to publish a book that I believed in, that other people didn't even think made any sense, that a guy would write to women about something. They said, you know what, we'll print it, but we won't pay to publish it because we don't know about this stuff. I emptied out my savings account to do that book. And spent $15,000 to get 5,000 copies. All the money my wife and I had in the world at the time. 5,000 copies, and sold out of them in 2 weeks. And another 5,000 and sold out in 2 weeks. And now that book has sold close to 2 million copies. And I can get a publishing deal pretty easy now. But the real education wasn't in the book, but it was in the floods of mail that came from all over the world after I wrote the book, as people began to scratch out secrets of what was going on in their lives and in their houses. I got letters unbelievable. If I had time and a few more chicken wings, I'd tell you about it. Letters from all over the world, amazing letters scribbled in the middle of the night, some by women who said, he's in there with my daughter right now, and if he knew I were writing to you, he would kill me, but I need your prayers. I'm living in hell and nobody knows it. Letters from women in the church who were writing to tell me, you know, I didn't go to church for 2 Sundays. The church doesn't know why, but my eye was black, my lip was busted, and I couldn't go to church. I didn't know I know now that every 15 seconds a woman is beaten to death in this country by somebody who says he loves her. At the time I wrote Woman Thou Art Loose, 1 in 5 women were molested between the ages of 5 and 15. And it's not gotten better, it's gotten worse now to 1 in 3. And to all of that, the church is just skipping and dancing and going on and building choirs and having fun and having church, but nobody wants to talk the real issues. I've comforted mothers who've been confronted by daughters who've decided that they were lesbians, and held weeping fathers who were embarrassed by young sons who decided that they didn't want a girlfriend, they wanted a boyfriend. And to all of that, we've said almost nothing at all. And I wonder in my own mind, how did we get here? And I'm going to tell you something tonight. It is true that the enemy attacks our women, and he leads them into captivity whenever possible. And that's why I believe that God led me to write Woman Thou Art Loose in the first place. It's not so much that the enemy wants to kill women, he wants them in captivity. Because as David had to go and rescue the wives of his people who were held captive, he being a man was sent after women who was held captive, and he had to encourage him be able to go do it. But once he got uplifted, he was able to go get her and bring her into a place of restoration. The enemy does want women to be held captive by their past, by their body images, by their ages, by their stages, by their weight, by all sorts of things. Anything he can use to keep you locked up, he will do it. But my sisters, hear me good tonight. The enemy is in no way as much after you as he is the men. For it is the seed of the woman that the prophecy said would rise up and bruise the head of the seed of the serpent. And the enemy knows that if he can destroy your man, he doesn't have to destroy you. You'll break your back working more jobs, carrying more loads, dealing with rough men because you've lost your covering. And if you don't break your back making up for the loss of a man, you'll break your heart grieving over a son who's in trouble today. And the enemy knows that if he can destroy the Zerah, the seed, the male seed, he'll leave the house uncovered and break the heart of the woman, distort the image of the children, and he can get the whole house when he gets one man. And the enemy is after men. And for the last year and a half, I've been counseling and reading and writing and praying. And I've got something to tell you tonight, and it is very, very important. We have got to draw a bloodline and tell the devil, you cannot destroy our seed, our Zerah, our man. I came to tell the women tonight, thy brother shall rise again. Lazarus may be dead and stinking, and the stone may be rolled in front of him, but the lie tonight, thy brother shall rise again. Whether he's a father, a husband, or a 12-year-old boy, I declare and decree resurrection for male seed to stand in their rightful place in the name of Jesus. Standing in the mirror, I talk about this in the book. I was standing in the mirror and I was shaving myself. I have 3 sons and 2 daughters. My youngest son at this time was about 7 or 8 years old. And I was standing there shaving myself in the mirror. And I was trying to be discreet and subtle, cunning, if you please, because he wants so much to do everything that I do that I was afraid he'd learn where I keep my razors. And something that would be a blessing for him later, if he took it too soon, he would skin off of his face to the point of bleeding because he took a good thing at the wrong time. Isn't it funny how something can be good only if it's given at the right time? And so I was having this moment with him and trying to talk to distract him. And I was looking in the mirror at him, and he was looking in the mirror at me. He's standing here, I'm standing here, the mirror's right here. And when I looked at him, I was looking at what I was. And when he looked at me, he was looking at what he would become. And my heart went out for all of the young boys who have spent their lives looking in front of a mirror for the image of a father that they never saw. And having no real reflection of masculinity, they just allowed anybody to paint whatever face they wanted on the wall, and they became what was painted on the wall they saw. And Dexter said to me, he's already started preaching. He's not quite, he's going to be 10 this weekend, and he's already preached his first sermon. And he looked at me and he says, Daddy, I said, what, Dex? He said, you're everything I want to be. The kind of thing that when your kid says it to you, you want to buy them 5 Nintendos, a set of big wheels, and a trip to Disneyland. Come on, men, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, your chest swells out. You work out in the gym. You get muscles, triceps, and biceps everywhere. You say, yeah. Oh, yeah. But before I could really brag, I thought to myself, yeah, but you don't know everything I am. You have seen a very censored, strained impression of what I am. Talk to me in 20 years after you found out that Superman is Clark Kent. Talk to me after you have seen me tired and weary or angry or moody or make a wrong decision or a wrong turn. And if you can feel that way knowing my fallacies, then your admiration will cease to be a fantasy, and then I will be comforted by your compliment rather than pressured to perform and live up to what you think I am. Because when it comes down to this business about being men, the pressure is on. I mean, the pressure is on, ladies. Let me tell you, the pressure is on from little boys to teenagers to early 20s. All your life, the pressure is on. And don't think getting saved cuts it off. It's still on when you get saved, because now you're trying to figure out how to be a man. Now you got to figure out how to be a man of God. Now there's some pressure. There's some pressure at all times and in all places. And don't you dare get anything wrong, because there's always a critic standing around there to tell you what you got wrong. It's real pressure. To be Superman is work. It's hard to be Superman 24/7. What do you do when Superman gets or runs into kryptonite, or finds himself in a cave of disparity, and all of a sudden he's in trouble? What do you do when Superman loses his job or his kidneys? What do you do when Superman runs into a crisis in his life and he's trying to maintain an image so that he doesn't disappoint anybody, but deep down inside his whole life is falling apart and nobody knows it? Such is the case in my text tonight. Elijah is God's great man of faith and power, but he has run into a real calamity. A calamity so strong and so intensive and so inclusive that it has driven him into a cave without a knife, without a gun, without a war, without one soldier or one chariot. Just gradually, day by day, he erodes back into a cave. I'm amazed because I am convinced through the Holy Spirit that the enemy is trying to destroy men. And when men die, we don't die like women. We die quietly. We don't say a word. A woman says to me the other day, she says, my husband came to me and asked for a divorce. She said it was 3 weeks after our anniversary. She gave me roses on my anniversary, and 3 weeks later he asked me for a divorce. Because women think that if you manifest outward signs, you are inwardly happy. But a man can perform outwardly and be inwardly miserable, and the woman never have a clue of what's going on. When I started writing, I thought that I would write to men only, because I just wanted to call together groups of men and minister to men. But when I found out how women understood about men, I thought we had to open up this conversation and allow the daughters of God to hear this conversation too. They don't know. To my surprise and my chagrin, most women, all they've ever been taught about men, they learned from other women. Just walk through the grocery store and look at the Woman's Today and the McCall's magazine and the Essence and Ladies Today and fashion magazines with all of your hats and hairdos and 7 ways to rekindle, 5 ways to make yourself attractive, 10 ways to make yourself look like you've lost 10 miles. These are what men really want. This is what really, notice that the articles are written by women. Or the conversations around the coffee pot when you sit with your other girlfriends and you say, girl, you know how men are. Or the mamas who taught you about men based on her experience with her man, and you took the shoe that she gave you for her man and put it on your man's foot, and never recognized it was not your mama's husband. In our community, we suffer from disappearing fathers who never show up, for men who make babies and don't take care of them. We suffer from absentee fathers. It's amazing. Our statistics are real high, though you all are catching up with us, but we're really bad with that. In our community, you suffer from silent fathers. It's not that they weren't there, they just don't talk. It's the kind of thing that when you say, what are you thinking about? And he says, nothing. And it is this mysticism around masculinity that leads to the destruction of our daughters. Mystified about masculinity. Hungry for male attention, they seek the attention in inappropriate ways and fall prey to mistakes that we as parents try to cover. Oh, have another chicken wing. And the problem is the place that God has designed for us to get the most help. Often it's the place where we have the most pressure to live up to the image of acceptance. We dare not come to church and admit that we're not happy today. So we come in. Praise the Lord. Oh, praise the Lord. We are so good. Aren't we glad to be here today? And it makes as much sense as going to the doctor's office and never being willing to disrobe. I want you to treat me while I hide. Make me better, but I won't tell you my symptoms. Because you go in the doctor's office, how are you, Nellie? I'm fine. What are you doing here? I mean, it's like going into the emergency room and you drive up in the emergency room, you leap out of the car and you run in and say, all is well. Normally, people don't just drop by the emergency room to see how the doctor's feeling today. I brought you some apple pie. I thought you might be hungry. And yet when we come to church, we come in with this intense need to appear as if we had no need of the word we come to get. Then why then do we come? For Jesus was not attracted to people that were not sick. Jesus said, they that are not sick don't need a physician. Jesus hung out with some of the most questionable people people in situations that would make the church turn up their nose. Jesus hung out with people that got him in trouble with church folk because Jesus cared enough to get his hands dirty and get down in the muck and the mire of real life situations. Glory to God. Touch 3 people and tell them something's going to happen in here. The divorce rate in the church is about to exceed, if it hasn't already, the rate of divorce in the world. And we pray for people, anoint them with oil and tell them, go on, God bless you, you're fine. It's not that simple. Or we give them simple solutions, simple solutions. Simple solutions like, you just need to communicate more. But what we don't tell people is that we don't speak the same language. We do not speak the same language. Women talk in circles. They do. That's not a criticism, that's an observation. When something is worrying a woman, she talks around it. It's not what she's talking about, is not what's on her mind. She hadn't hit the runway yet. It's like a plane circling the runway. She's gonna go around it about 3 or 4 times, and then she's gonna land on the runway in a minute. Women talk in circles, men talk in straight lines, straight lines, just straight to it. Women talk in circles. And that's why when you answer her while she's circling, she gets upset, because what you answered her about is not even what she's worried about. See, I want you to understand this. That most women process by communication. When something is really worrying a woman, she wants to talk about it. And when you come to us and say we need to talk about it, we would rather pull our lip over top of our head and jump in hot chicken grease. Come on, man, am I right about it? When she says we need to talk, you think, oh no, I gotta go wash the car. The cat has the measles. We don't like to talk. We don't like to talk. Not open confrontation, not with y'all. First of all, y'all remember everything. Yeah, you said it. You were standing over there, you had on those blue jeans and a white t-shirt, and you were eating a strawberry ice cream cone. I remember it. It was Tuesday. It was 3 o'clock. He can't remember what he had on, whether he was standing there or not. So he said, sisters, let me help you with men. When you get worried about something, you need to talk, because you by communication. We process in seclusion. When something is really bothering him, the more it bothers him, the less he says about it. This is what leads to arguments, because you say, as you circle around the runway and he says absolutely nothing, then you say, that's what gets on my nerves about you, always sitting there with that remote control in your hand. Did you hear what I said about these kids? You don't even care. Because you think we're like you, that if we really cared, we would verbalize. But when we really care, we internalize. And our silence doesn't mean that we don't care. It means we're equally as worried as you are. We just process it differently. That's why the problem that you bring to him on Monday and can't get anything out of his mouth about, on Thursday evening he comes to you and says, you know that thing you was telling me about the other day? Because that means that all day Monday, all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday, he was in a cave processing what he thought ought to be done about it. And by Friday morning, he shows up and comes up to you. And now he's ready to talk. And you look at him and say, what are you talking about? We process in a cave. The only problem is, if a woman doesn't understand the things that I'm teaching, when he goes in the cave and process, you can roll a stone in front of the cave and he can't get out. And some men have been in the cave 10 years. I call them cavemen. Elijah was a caveman. He was a great man, but he was a caveman. He was an anointed man, but he was a caveman. He had internalized so much that he couldn't get out of the cave. And only God could get him out of the cave. Some of our were good men and great men. They loved us, but they couldn't tell us because they were cavemen. They cared, but they couldn't touch us because they were cavemen. They wanted to support us, but they couldn't be there because they were locked up in a cave of some vain, egotistical idea of masculinity. And our boyhood died waiting for him to come out of the cave. I call them cavemen. And there are cavemen in here tonight, locked up in caves with clubs, making grunting noises and sounding. Cavemen trapped in a situation with no release because they cannot open up. Here lies our dilemma. When women talk to men, they often talk to men like they're women. But we're not the same. So whether you apply this to your boyfriend or your son, the information I'm sharing with you tonight and the information I've written in this book is things you really need to know, because you may be talking to your son like he's a woman and getting no results from him because you're talking around something and he doesn't know what in the world you are saying. I come in and ask my wife, what's for dinner? She says to me, I was driving home and I realized we didn't have anything to eat. I had to stop at the grocery store. Do you not know there was so much traffic on 35 to go all the way back around the corner and come up 75? There's a car wreck on 75. I thought I would never get through the traffic. Got all the way over to Big Bear, and when I got to Big Bear, do you not know they had the nerve to be out of chicken after they had advertised that it was going to be on sale for 59 cents a pound? I had to get back in the car and go over to Kroger's. And you know I hate to go to Kroger's because I can't stand that girl at the checkout counter. But I went through all of that and got the chicken hung. I don't know whether it's going to be any good. I didn't ask you all of that. I just want to know what's for dinner. Just say come on, fellas, don't leave me out there by myself. I only spent a few chapters talking about men and women. I spent a few chapters talking to men about having a friend, a good male friend. I know in the church it has become cliche to say that your spouse is your best friend, but I challenge us to rethink that, because marriage is somewhere beyond friendship. Marriage is a celebration of oneness, not two-ness, oneness. It's really deeper than that. See, you can't cheat on a friend. Marriage is a deeper covenant that I understand what we mean by it. But in reality, you need to irrigate your life with friends other than your spouse. There are some things that you as a man, in fact, I really use David as a syllabus to talk about all of this issue, and I'm just giving you a brief synopsis tonight, but I believe that David would have never been king had he not found Jonathan. The anointing was not enough to bring him into his kingdom. There are many men in this room who are anointed right now, but until you find Jonathan, somebody that you can cross-pollinate with and challenge with and exchange with, you'll never be the king you could have been had you had a friend with whom you could be transparent. David stripped himself in front of Jonathan. They traded places. They had a covenant exchange. They had a friendship. That is important. And I know you say you don't need it, and you say she is your best friend, but I challenge you tonight. You know you don't know everything. He didn't say nothing. He just went. See, you can't answer nothing like that, because if you laugh real big when you get in the car, she's gonna say, "What did you not tell me?" Yeah, so I don't blame you. Don't laugh. Just look straight ahead. Look confused. Go. You know you don't tell her everything. What was that movie where it said, tell the truth, tell the truth? God said, you can't handle the truth. You tell her the truth. I'm still hurt over what you said. I can't believe you. You don't tell everything. Sometimes you need to talk to somebody where you can dump and open up and express who you are. And then women, you need friends too. You need friends too. I mean, I don't want to hear about why this pantyhose is better than that pantyhose. And for this kind of dress, you need a strapless bra and you know, the Wonder Bra. I don't really, that's too much information. Surprise me. Let me figure out what kind it is. Don't tell you. Oh. Friendship. Can't believe I said that, did I? Know. Pray for me. Pray for me. I'm going through an attack. I told you the devil was after the men. He done got the bishop now. Talking about Wonder Bras in the middle of our convention. The devil's a liar. I'm not going to look at Billy Joe till I get past this part, and then I'll look at him again. I know he's red in the face. See, that's one of the disadvantages about being white, because when y'all embarrassed, everybody can tell. I can be embarrassed all I want to, and y'all can't even tell. I know I'm sick. Pray for me. Y'all invited me. You know what? There are very few world-renowned, well-known preachers in all of the world. There are some, but there are not that many that I haven't met or interacted with or spent some time with. And if I get close enough to them and they get close enough to me to be transparent, which really takes a while, because you really have to cut through what school they went to and how many members they have and what their annual budget is to really get down to a real person. But if you get down to the real person, most of them will tell you beneath all of their responsibilities and all of their accomplishments and all of their accolades, they're lonely. Nobody to eat with, nobody to talk to, nobody to trust, nobody who's not jealous of them, not envious of them, nobody with whom they can be transparent, nobody that they can open up and dump their concerns about their kids, about their life, about their age, about their stage. They're just lonely. And because I own several business companies, I interact with CEOs all the time, the executives and marketing specialists and things like that. To my surprise, they're lonely too. I was having a lunch with a professor from a major university, and right in the middle of the meeting, while we were talking about getting grants and student loans for underprivileged children, for some crazy reason, I asked him, "Are you happy?" And tears leaped out of his eyes. He said, "Nobody ever asked me that." And before he could catch himself and drop his veil, loneliness leaped out of his face, and all of his degrees and all of his money stopped him from being lonely. And I want you to understand tonight, and I want you, can I give you this book? If I give you this, would you read it? Absolutely. I'm going to give it to you. You read it, I'm going to give it to you. See, there's something you must understand, that God first tells you about men. The very first thing God tells you about men after he made him, he looked at him and said, it's not good for him to be alone. We don't do alone well. We don't do alone well. I work in prisons and maximum security institutions. I spent 3 days in San Quentin dealing with hardened inmates. I mean the rough and woolly kind. And when they get ready to chasten them, they don't beat them, they don't slap them, they don't punch them. They take those rough serial killers and lock them up in solitary confinement because they know it's not good for man alone. This big, wild, burly guy left alone begins to whimper and cry in a corner because he is alone. Saddam Hussein and all of his horrendous, hellacious things that he did to mass murdering, almost genocide of a generation. This mass murdering, angry tyrant locked up in a jail cell alone. The paper reads, he has sunken into deep depression. You know why? It's not good for man to be alone. It's not good. And the only problem with aloneness is you can be alone in a crowd. We can be alone, surrounded by people. We can be alone and be successful in business. And we can be alone and be married. And we can be alone and make love. And we can be alone and have children and never breathe a word of it secretly and silently. He roads away like the banks of a river without ever saying a word to anyone. And nobody ever knew that the man was alone. One day he takes and he never comes back, or he does something crazy in the middle of his life, like becomes an alcoholic or getting strung out on prescription drugs or some other kind of medication. Everybody's shocked. Can you believe that Deacon Wilson did all of that? And nobody knew that all of the time that Deacon Wilson was folding up chairs and hanging up stuff, that he was secretly alone. I did not come to Tulsa to preach. I came to Tulsa driving an ambulance because God sent me here to go and get his sons, his daughters, and command a release of captive souls who are living their lives in solitary confinement, quoting scriptures all the while, but locked up in a tomb of aloneness. Rich as you please, CDs and stocks and investments and annuity do not stop you from being alone. Adam had a job, but he was still alone. Elijah is in trouble in the cave, and most of his problems is that he is alone. God said, you need a protege like Elisha. You need to anoint Hazael to be a king. You need to surround yourself with other great men. Cross-pollinating eases the soul, brings out creativity, makes you more fruitful. It is not good for man to be alone. As wonderful as you are, and as much as you've done by yourself living in your cave, you would have been more if you would come. You would be better if you come out. And the enemy wants you to stay in your cave, and he will roll a stone in front of you to keep you in there, and you'll die in silence. And even people who love you will never even know that you lived the last 20 years in a cave. Am I boring y'all? Okay. I have to check sometime. I wrote Emotions because I thought that it was God's will to reach his would-be kings, because you are a king and you don't even know it. David thought he was a shepherd boy. That boy was not a shepherd boy. That job was just training for destiny. He was a king and he didn't even know it. Mothers, hear me well. You mothers particularly that have sons, there is a king in every kid. Oh God. The reason David reached his greatness is because somebody came to him and told him who he was before he acted like what they said. God said, I found a man who's after my heart. And Samuel almost anointed the wrong son in Jesse's house is that he was looking for grown folks, but God was talking about a boy, because God calls those things as though that are not as though they were, because he knows he has the power to make it become what he says. So God doesn't wait till you get there to call you something that it doesn't appear that you are, because God knows that it's down in you, and before it's over, he's gonna get it out of you. And when we look for kings, we look for people who have already arrived. But when God looks for kings, he looks for kids. Because God knows that there is a king in every kid. If I have accomplished anything at all in my life, any accomplishments amidst all of my stumblings and bumblings and messing stuff up, it has chiefly been because my mother looked at me with the firm conviction when I was a child that there was something wonderful inside of me, something excellent and something great, while she cooked her biscuits and put them in the pan and listened at me ramble. She looked at me. I said was important until I had respect for my own thoughts and my own opinion. And I worry today because nobody's listening at our next generation of kings. And when nobody will listen at you, you lose respect in your own words. And so I want to say to the young men and the young girls that are in this room, never lose sight of the king within you. Even tied up in kiddie stuff. Paul says, when I was a child, I thought of the child, I spake of the child, and understood of the child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Childish things then are how we think, how we speak, and how we understand. The word understand is the truth you stand under. The truth you stand under determines the development in your life. What truth are you standing over? Who established the truth that you stand over? Did what they said about you when you were 7 establish a level of truth that cramped you and dwarfed you and stopped you up into what you ought to be? Then you need to move that truth you're standing over and stand up and become what God created you to be. If I sound like I'm passionate, I am. If I sound like I'm on fire, I am. Because the Lord told me that if I would travel the length and breadth of this country and preach this word, that there would come a mighty resurrection. A mighty resurrection. A mighty resurrection, a mighty thirst-quenching, gully-washing, mind-renewing, devil-chasing, cancer-rebuking resurrection from the Lord. You see, if our pastors and leaders and elders and people like me, if we never kill another giant, it won't matter. We've killed our giants. The next giant killers are you all. You are the giant killers. You are the giant killers. Read it and see. You are the giant killer. That's why the enemy wants to kill you, because you are the giant killers. The boys are the giant killers. And he's trying to kill them every way he can, because the devil knows that if you ever stand up and become what God has called you to be, the demons will tremble as you move into God's purpose for your life. Throw your hands up and say, I got to get out of this cave. Can I go just a little bit deeper? Something is going to happen when this word comes out. As women begin to understand the language of men, and men begin to understand the language of women, and you begin to understand it's not that we don't have emotions. We have what I call he-motions. We feel everything as deeply as you do. We just express it differently. I was holding my wife one day. She was falling apart. We were going through a crisis, and she was crying hysterically. I took her her in my arms, and I held her. And I love it because it makes me feel needed, and I need to be needed. And I held her, and I held her. You know what I'm talking about? It's something to be needed, and I'm holding her, and I'm patting her, and I said, baby, it's all right. It's okay, baby. It's going to be all right. And while I was patting her, I envied her just a little. Just a little. Because deep down inside, I felt like screaming too. But I wondered, if I would scream, who would catch me? If I would fall, who would hold me? And I gave her what I secretly wanted myself and sucked it up inside of myself and kept on going, because the last time I broke down and really fell apart, I was about 5. And you know what they told me? Big boys don't cry. And when you tell us that at 5, don't change it at 35. Because by then we're so far back in the cave. When you get ready for us to open up and express ourselves, we don't even know how. One footnote about this thing about communication. See, for communication, what we use most generally in our culture is words. But some of the deepest communication for men is not language. It's not language. It's not always language. It's in our eyes. It's in a pat on the shoulder. It's a coach who pats a boy in the rump. He doesn't say anything to him, but it means get back out there again. We speak sign language. And when we do use words, they don't mean the same thing. When a woman says to me, and she says, is this okay? Y'all doing okay? Okay. When a woman comes in my office and she says, Pastor, he's wonderful. Everything started out real good. I thought our marriage was going to be great. She says, but I'm going to tell you the truth. He may be cute. He may be fine. He's 6'2" and fine. But I can't trust him. When she says I can't trust him, she almost inevitably means that he is cheating, or she thinks he's cheating, or he has some sexual perversion or issue in his life. She says, I cannot trust him. That's what she means. But evidently, when a woman says it about a man, it is the epitome of an insult. To her, this is capital punishment. A woman just about will stand by you through anything else. You could rob this 7-Eleven and come home and say, I robbed the 7-Eleven and the police are coming. I don't even know why I did, and it's absolutely crazy. And the police could knock on the door. She say, Jimmy ain't here. But if you come home and said, I had a tryst with the secretary, she gonna kill you. Am I right, sister? Anyway. So stop telling us it's the sin of it. It's not the sin of it. It's your value system. Sometimes it's our value system. I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just our value system, because adultery tears a house. It tears a heart. I understand the seriousness of the issue quite clearly. I do. I really do. But when a man comes and he says to me, Pastor, I'm telling you, man, you don't know her. I'm telling you. You don't know her. You see her in church. I'm telling you, you don't know her. He says, I can't trust her. He generally does not mean infidelity, because we feel about our hearts the way you feel about your body. That's why Proverbs says, the heart of her husband does safely trust in her, that he has no need of spoil. You know what the hardest thing it is to give you? It's his heart. It's hard, because if you break my heart, you've broken me. You understand what I'm saying? So we try to guard our heart. I'm still not sure I asked Sister Jakes to marry me. I think that's what I was trying to say. Okay. I got somewhere about up in there, and she snatched it and ran, and we got married. Let me show you what I mean. It's difficult for us to open up and be transparent, to really tell you who we really are. It may take us a long time to finally get to the point that we, one night, in a moment of vulnerability, it's generally at night too, in a moment of okay, I won't go there. In a moment of vulnerability and transparency, I'm not going to put it all on you. Well, it's a little bit at a time. I don't want to put you in the shock, cardiac arrest. Anyway, in a moment of vulnerability, if we finally get up the nerve to tell you something about who we really are, or something that happened, or something we saw our mothers do, that happened with our fathers, or something that happened in our childhood, if in a moment of vulnerability we finally open up and tell you who we really are, and then 6 weeks later You, in a moment of anger, reach back and get something that I told you in a moment of vulnerability and use it to win the argument, because you know how y'all like to win the argument no matter what. If you break back and use something that I told you out of the treasure chest of my masculine soul, you will shut me down for the next 5 years and roll a stone in front of my cave and leave me locked in my dungeon, never speaking a word to you again. That's what he means when he says I can't trust her. If she tells her prayer partners and her prayer warriors about what's going on in our life, it violates trust. And we feel about that the way you feel about adultery. Never had anybody tell you that, did you? Am I right, fellas? I hasten to a close, but in one moment give you everything that I've spent a year and a half writing, but there are some things that you need to understand there. My brother has a motorcycle, and I think it's midlife crisis, but he gets on the motorcycle, ties a red rag around his head and jumps on a motorcycle, a Harley or something, and he puts his wife on the back, and his wife he looks like me, almost exactly like me. He's bald headed and got a great goatee and everything with big old head. We got the same mom and the same daddy, and we look just about alike. He rides around on a motorcycle, and his wife is a white woman. She's got blonde hair. So if you ever see T.D. Jakes on a motorcycle with a white woman with blonde hair, it ain't me. So don't be starting no rumors about me. That's my brother. Now, my wife is a Nubian princess. Zoom, zoom, zoom. He put Sharon on the back of the motorcycle. We call her Ellie Mae because she's country, you know. She said, Ernest! She said, Ernest, stop! Oh God, you're gonna kill us, Ernest! You're gonna kill you crazy! And he's just driving down the road, and they're going down the road in the house. And he said, Tommy, he said, we did real good all the while we're going down the straightway. He said, but when we get to the turn, he said, Sharon almost got me killed. I said, how Sharon almost get you killed? June, I call him June because his junior's name is Ernest. I said, June, how Sharon almost get you killed? He said, because when you get the turns, if she doesn't lean in the same way you're leaning, you can't make it through the turns. And suddenly I figured out what was going on. That's why people have been married 20 years and then suddenly get a divorce. That's why you do real good with your son until he gets about 11 or 12, and then all of a sudden he becomes unmanageable and you can't deal with him. You can't figure out what happened to him. You're losing us in the turns. Whenever a man goes through a change, it's a turn. And if you go this way and he goes this way, the relationship goes that way. And you're losing us in the turns. And so I tried to tell you in the music and in the book to watch out for the turns. If all of a sudden he develops a sudden sickness, for us it's a turn. All of a sudden he develops diabetes, he's shooting insulin, for him it's a major turn. It's a tough place. Our parents die, it's a turn. We lose a job, it's a turn. Oh God, help me preach. We get up under pressure, stress, it's a turn. Get to midlife crisis, it's a turn. Go from toddlers to adolescence, it's a turn. All you got to do the straight ways, you got it. You got the straight way down pat. You got the straight way. You bad in the straight way. Watch out for them turns. You're losing your sons, my sisters. You're losing your husbands. You're losing your men in the turn. Two things I'll tell you and I'll get out of your way. When I first started pastoring my church, I tell you it was something, oh God, I got down to Dallas. I was 38 years old and crazy. I jumped down there, I was casting out devils and calling altar calls for witches and all kinds of crazy stuff. I was just crazy, country and crazy. I just jumped down there. I knew I wasn't going to be young much longer. If I was going to get it, I had to hurry up. But like me don't want to start over now. I was casting out devils and praying for people, rebuking demons and healing the sick, almost raising the all kinds of stuff like that. And this woman gets up and she got her son, I think he's maybe 9 or 10 or something like that, and she grabs him by the arm and she brings him down to the altar, and she comes down the altar, and this is the way she does, because this is the way a lot of church people do when things get crazy. She comes, I said, what's the matter? What's the matter? She said, he got a demon. He got a demon. He got a demon. Cast the devil out of him. I said, why you say he got a demon? He like to got a demon. This is the first mistake she makes. And this is a mistake that church women often make when they face a crisis in their life. They try to spiritualize a natural problem. And so when they have a natural problem, they get more spiritual. They talk in tongues, they anoint with oil, they roll their eyes up in the head, and they try to rebuke something that we need to work out another kind of way. And she's about to lose him in the turn. If I give you this, would you read it? I'll sow it into your life. Let me tell you something. Don't lose your loved ones in the turn. She's got him in the turn, and everything begins to fall apart. And all of a sudden, I look at him and I see something that she doesn't seem to see. She doesn't understand that he's gotten right at that age. He was a good little boy. He was doing fine because he understood the rules. The rules of the game were simple. Eat your cereal, say your prayers, go to bed. You're a good boy. That works good as long as we're in a safe environment. Then you go out of that environment, you hit a turn. Now you go into a system where you walk up in the playground, you try to be a nice, polite little boy like Mama taught you, and you say, when you all finish your turn, may I play with the ball? And they slap the glasses off of your head and bust you. You know why he's screaming and crying? It's not that it hurt. He can't figure out what happened. Because what worked in your world doesn't work in his world. And so he has to choose which world he's going to survive in. Now he becomes angry. I saw your commercial about angry people in the ghetto. This is why they get angry, because they can't figure out the rules to the new game. Now he becomes angry. The other thing that's happened to him, testosterone has hit him like crack cocaine. Sisters, it is crack cocaine. You're just sitting out there riding on your big wheels, just riding around, just having a good time, and all of a sudden it hits. See, nobody tells y'all this. This is major. All of a sudden, mama is not the prettiest woman you ever saw in your life. You'll get it later, never mind. Doesn't understand that she's losing her son in the turns. Watch out for the turns. You'll save your kids. I caught Jim Baker coming out of a turn. He'd just gotten released from prison. And I was one of the first clergy, not the first, but one of the first to invite him to come speak. It was very controversial back then. And I was in Cincinnati doing a Back to the Bible conference, and the reporter from the Cincinnati Herald came to me and he said, aren't you ashamed of yourself to have an ex-con come and speak to this gathering of believers? And I said, I'll answer you if you promise to write what I said. He said, I'll write it if you say it. I said, here it goes. I said, whatever he did wrong, he repented for it. And I said, whatever he did to society, he frankly overpaid for it. And it seems ridiculous to me that we would preach out of a Bible that was written by ex-cons. He said, I said, for the record, Jeremiah was an ex-con, and Pastor Moses was a murderer, and Paul the apostle was a Christian killer, and even Jesus was locked in jail. And if we can preach about what they learned and what they knew, what's wrong with Jim? And he wrote this in the Cincinnati Herald. It's right in the Cincinnati Herald. Jim told us something that I mentioned in the first part of the book. I'll share it with you and I'll sit down. This is my final closing. I closed 3 times. This is the third one. You're up. She said, we're used to it. Amen. I feel right at home. There was a man who lived alone, and he had a fish aquarium because he had no kids, no spouse, Didn't have time for pets, traveled all the time. Had a fish aquarium, beautiful tropical fish, expensive fish, exotic fish. Gave them all names. Named all the fish. Named them and took care of them, fed them weekly or so. He came in from traveling, he fed the fish and went to bed. But while he slept, the heater in the tank malfunctioned. And when he woke up in the morning, all of his beautiful fish were bloated, their eyes engorged, floating on the top of the tank. They were dead. And it bothered him. In that way that things bother you when you've lost so much stuff that one more thing won't do. And he said, I wonder if sometime during the night, wonder if they screamed and nobody heard them. He said, I loved them and I fed them. I didn't know that things were getting too hot for them. I didn't realize that they lived in a different world from me, faced different circumstances from me, had different problems from me. I didn't know. If I would have heard them, I would have come and got them, but I never heard them scream. And I want to tell you tonight, I guarantee you tonight, there are men in this room, I don't care how they dressed, what color they are, what they make. Screaming. Everybody's pulling at them. Life is closing in them. Their body's changing. Their health is changing. They've hit a turn here or there in their life, in their personal life, in their finances, in their marriage with their family. Lost their mother, lost their dad. They're in a turn and they're handling it real good on the outside. For the last year and a half, God filled my ears with the screaming of his kids. I tell you tonight, they are screaming. And I don't know whether you can hear me or not, but if you're in this room and you're screaming, and life is changing, and your body's changing, and your job is changing, or your family life is changing, and you're trying to hold up to your Superman image, and something in you is about to explode, God sent me here for you. God sent me here. God sent me here for you. And I came to tell you, don't die. And don't give in, and don't crumble, and don't float to the top of the tank and do something crazy. I want to tell you what David said. David said, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and delivered him out of all of his troubles. I didn't just write to explain men to women. I also to tell men, God can hear what you cannot say. I swear to you, God can hear what you do not know how to say. God can hear what you would love to say. David said, I love the Lord, not because he gave me the kingdom, not because he gave me the palace. He said, I love the Lord because he heard my cry and he pitied every groan. And as long as I live and troubles rise, I will hasten to his throne. Jonah said, out of the belly of the fish cried I, and the Lord heard me and brought me up out of a horrible pit. Our sons are in a pit. Our deacons, elders, our husbands, our fathers, and many would-be kings are in a pit. And God told me to tell you, he can hear. He can hear. He said, go down, Moses, and tell Pharaoh that I have heard the cry of my people. My sons are crying over what they cannot say. My daughters over what they cannot understand, and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. This day, I want you to bow your heads and close your eyes. This is the most sacred moment of the service. Everybody praying, nobody moving, nobody walking. God is getting ready to deliver somebody who's dealing with issues. God's going to do something that therapy couldn't do. He's going to break yokes and bondages and give you peace and deliverance unspeakable. God is going to set you free. You're here tonight. You just came to church. You had no idea that God was going to speak so directly to things that you think and don't tell anybody. But tonight was your night for a breakthrough. Now you can sit there and be macho and be important if you want to, or you can see opportunity to have a fresh encounter with God. It doesn't mean that you're not saved, David. It doesn't mean that you're not anointed. It just means that you'll never be who you could have been if you don't make it through this turn. There are men stuck in a turn right now, backed up in a cave like Elijah, and tonight God wants to set you free. And if I don't reach anybody tonight, I've got to reach you. If you're here tonight, right where you are, I want you to stand up on your feet. Just stand up on your feet. Preacher, I hear you. You're to me. That spoke to my situation, that spoke to my circumstance. Something in my life feels just like that. I'm a good man. I've called fire down from heaven, but I feel like I'm in a cave sometimes. Things are closing in on me sometimes. I don't open up easily. I don't talk easily. I love a whole lot, but I don't say a whole lot. And sometimes I want to scream. They're standing all over the building, and there are many more that want to stand. I want you to overcome fear and your inhibition and stand. You may not ever get another opportunity like this one. Don't let the devil talk you out of it. Tell the devil, no deal. This is my chance to get out of my cave. I'm standing tonight in the name of the Lord. And I just believe that if I administer this, there are enough people who care about the men, and enough women who care about their sons, and enough women who've been praying, God, let my husband go, set him free, bless him and raise him up. That something is going to happen in here tonight. And I want every man that's standing and every man that should be standing to find the nearest aisle and meet me down here at this altar. We're going to break that yoke and that stronghold off of your life tonight in the name of Jesus. I want you to come out of the balcony. I want you to come from the back. Young men and old men and black men and white men and rich men and poor men. Today is the day of deliverance. I declare a breakthrough for you today. In the name of Jesus, come out you are. Come out forever you are. Come out of your cave. Come out of your dungeon. Come out of your confusion. Come out of your despair. Come out of anger and hostility and frustration and rebellion. Come out of pornography and adultery and homosexuality. Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out! Come out!